Since I've been in Texas, I watched some completely disgusting bourgeois lawyer who charges way, way, way too much just because he's the principal. Completely misrepresent and malign this woman who was, I understood from getting to know her, actually a wonderful woman who was a great mother, but happened to be Christian in a certain way. And her ex husband, was not. He came from a different religious tradition. And this lawyer used this woman's religion and the difference in her religion to totally chastise and malign her in a horrible way. And not only that, but she wasn't a first language English speaker. And this lawyer did everything he could to try to characterize her in all these derivative actions that he had concurrent to her case as ISIS. Literally, she was ISIS. And he treated her and chastised her and targeted her as if successfully chastising her, targeting her, would somehow have an impact on public announcements, some of which were not very public, by the way, connected to ISIS. And because she was the kind of woman she was, she understood this in some sort of prophetic context. And she and I experienced that together. I bring this up because it seems like these lawyers in Texas have a predilection for trying to chastise men using their wives. See, I also have a theory that even though the woman I'm talking about and her husband come from completely different ethno nationalist context, and they were both immigrants to the United States and had children born in the United States, I think the Texas lawyers have a fetish for trying to target certain kinds of exotic foreign men and take away their assets and then drive their wives around. It's what I call the Lady Ferguson treatment. I literally think that what they do is they do this thing where they tell women, if you want to be in leadership, then you got to do it like Lady Ferguson did. You got to do that thing where you stand by your man, and then after his term is done, you can come in. But in the meantime, there's the invisible empire. And they got to make sure she knows who's really in charge, which is never her. She's nothing more than a mouthpiece for her husband. And depending upon how well her husband treats them in their, demands for patronage and demands for kickbacks and demands for acknowledgement, they may or may not be gentle when they get access to the means by which to drive her vehicle around. The thing is, if you're one of these guys that had your securities license pulled because you were sanctioned by Treasury, then what happens to your wife when they decide to play this game? And I think that what they've been doing is they've been using derivative litigation to hook up means by which they can place liens on the homestead. And maybe even get a tax waiver on the homestead of the spouse. And do all of these little legislative and all of these little litigious tricks to torture the women connected to men that are competition or opposition. I actually think this is a long standing tradition in Texas. And the worst part is, I think they try to ingratiate certain other men into experiencing the Texas culture by doing the same thing. I think they try to organize by trying to curry favor with men by sharing this model with them. And some women may or may not cooperate, depending upon what their own political ambitions are. And that's why we've never had a woman president in the United States. There's no way you're going to get to the presidency unless you have the backing of Texas Gas and Oil. And there's no way they're going to let a woman in there unless she does it the Lady Ferguson way. She might get to be vice president. Maybe. If it's the right silver hair in the president's position. But you're not going to be a woman and you get to the presidency unless you do it like Lady Ferguson did. And we don't have a whole lot of candidates in our country to meet those demands. We really don't. There's very, very few that qualify. And the last thing that would qualify is a woman that's single or a woman that's married to a man that was not born in the United States of America.